بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. The masail that I thought were important about fasting have now been completed. Yet if there are any problems, personal ones or practical ones, please do not feel ashamed or restrained to refer to me. Inshallah ta'ala we'll be able to solve them. There can be so many questions about traveling and also some other personal questions related to fasting which people feel constrained to ask, but it is said, La haya'a fid deen. As far as your religion is concerned, your faith is concerned, there should be no shame about asking. You can ask and inshallah ta'ala we will answer. Tonight I thought it is very important again to repeat certain masail, and those are first and foremost connected with Salatul Jama'at, because in these nights, mashallah ta'ala, we get a good turnout of people who join Salatul Jama'at. Whether it is prayed on time as it was tonight or yesterday, or whether it is prayed later. According to the fatwa of Ayatullah Al-Udhama Sayyid Sistani, it is mustahab to wait for namaz-e-jama'at, and if one has to delay his prayers for the sake of joining Salatul Jama'at, he is allowed. So those of us who think that we want to pray on time but alone, they can wait if they would like to join namaz-e-jama'at, which will be prayed, say at about 7:30 or whatever is the time. But in Salatul Jama'at, which is called the congregational prayer, where we pray together, there is one who leads the prayers, and he is called Imam. Of course, remember that in our terminology, Imam has got various meanings. He is the Imam for the prayers, Imamul Jama'at, that means Imam for namaz-e-jama'at, whoever leads us in namaz. He is not Imam Ma'soom. As far as Ma'soom Imam are concerned, we only have 12. We don't have 13th. So that Imam and this Imam is different. Imam and Ma'soom are only 12 Imam, starting from Imam Ali alayhi salam up to Imam al-Zaman salawatullah. Here, of course, Imam is one who is leading. And of course, we have this sort of terminology in Islamic sciences. Those who know will remember that if there is any alim who is very, very proficient, very clever, and expert in particular science of Islam, he is called Imam of that science. For example, if he is very good in tafsir, he is called Imamul Mufassirin. If he is very good in usul al-fiqh, then he is called Imamul Usul, and so on. Imam meaning expert at that moment, someone who is leading in that profession or in that science. There must be an Imam who will lead. As far as the Ma'mumeen are concerned, that means those who join namaz-e-jama'at, there is no condition for the number of people to join. If there is one who is leading and one who is being led, Jama'at is formed. That means two people, Jama'at can also be formed. In namaz-e-jum'ah, of course, there must be 5 minimum, including the Imam. In namaz-e-jum'ah, if there are less than 5, there can be no namaz-e-jum'ah. But namaz-e-jama'at of Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha and Subh, What is required is one leads, another follows. However, if there is only one who is following, then for him it is to stand to the right of Imam. Just behind, but to the right. But if there are many who are following, then of course they must stand behind the Imam and the Imam will lead. The distance between Imam and those who lead, those who are led, should not be more than 3 or 4 feet. In Namaz Jama'at, the Imam has got certain conditions. He must be baligh, that means he must have attained the age of puberty. Baligh. He must be sane, that means you can't have an Imam who is half mad, crack or whatever. And he must be Shia Ithna Ashari, that means there can be no Namaz Jama'at behind an Imam who is not Shia Ithna Ashari. Not Namaz Jama'at in the sense of fiqh Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq salawatullah. Why I say this, I will explain someday. And he must be of legitimate birth, that means he must not be waladul haram or waladul zina, born illegitimately. And he must be adil, that means he must be just or probity, with men of probity. That means you have not witnessed him do any gunah kabira or any sin. If you have not seen him do any gunah kabira, he is adil. You don't need asking others, and if you have seen, you don't need telling others. Simple. For Imam himself who is leading the prayers, the niyat he will make is that I am praying, qurbatan ilallah. He does not make a niyat that I am leading. If an Imam makes a niyat that I am leading the prayers, his namaz will be batil. Because there is no namaz for leading, there is namaz for praying. You see, he has got to pray himself, that's all. Of course, we who follow him, behind him we stand as ma'mum, or the one who are being led or followers, we have to make a niyat that I am praying this namaz maghrib or isha qurbatan ilallah behind this Imam. Now there is no need to know his name, but at least to specify that here is the Imam behind whom I am praying qurbatan ilallah ta'ala. This is important. Now there is a question whether Imam himself should know whether he is adil or not. That is also a question. Because you may think that he is adil. What about Imam himself? Should he be sure that he is adil or not? That, of course, is not necessary for us to find out. All the ulama have said that Imam himself should know his responsibility. If he feels that he can take the responsibility upon his shoulders of the namaz of others who are following him, then he will lead. If he feels he cannot, he will decline and say, I am sorry. But remember that he has got to be adil in fiqh of Hazrat Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq salawatullah salamu alayhi. Any Tom, Dick and Harry cannot lead. That means if a man is committing an open sin and you tell him tafaddal bismillah, you cannot. If a man does not know how to read Surah Al-Hamd or recite properly, we cannot tell him to lead. He has got to be one who has got this fulfillment of these qualifications. Why I say this? Because in other Muslim communities we find that anyone can lead. They come to the mosque, they find someone praying, they just keep a hand behind on his back to give him a signal that I am following you. Allahu Akbar. That is not the way we do. The way we do is that we follow after having judged and seen that we are following the right person. Shaykh Abbas Qummi alayhi rahmah writes that in earlier days there was one very pious alim, and the people used to request him to lead namaz jama'ah, and he would always decline, saying that this is very responsible position. The fact was that his mother was not allowing him to lead. His mother was highly trained and educated in matters of religion. She was a fadila, and she thought that her son was still not ready for it. So whenever people insisted, he would go to his mother and say, "Mother, now, what do you say?" She said, "Not now, not yet, wait." So one day he told the people that my mother refuses. So they went to his mother. And they said, "Well, why are you refusing when we are all believing that he is the one who should lead? He's a pious man, he's an alim." After insistence, he said, "All right, I allow, but only for today. One day." So people are happy, so at least for one day. Mother has allowed for one day, she has relented, now it will be inshallah for every day. When he came home, mother said, "So you led the prayers today?" He said, "Yes." "How many people were there?" "Oh," he said, "I saw at least 5 lines behind me." He said, "Then you are not leading tomorrow." The people went again to the mother, said, "What was wrong?" He said, "No, he's still not ready for it." Well, they persisted. He said, "All right, I allow again. Tomorrow he will lead. Not today, but tomorrow." When she allowed, he came again for Imam. When came back, mother said, "Today, how many were there who followed you?" He said, "Mother, I can't tell you. So nearly about 15, 16 lines behind me. The whole mosque was full." And she said, "Tomorrow, you are not leading." He kept quiet. When the people came to the mother and said, "Do you know that the lines are increasing behind him from 4 to 16 and 17 and people are really waiting for this jama'ah. Why do you say no?" She said, "All right, he will lead, inshallah, on this Thursday night, Maghrib." Okay. When he came back after having led the prayers, mother asked, "How many were there today?" He said, "Mother, I don't know. I was so engrossed in my ibadah. I don't know who followed me, who did not follow." He said, "From now onwards, you will lead. If you are worried about who follows and how many follow, then of course there is no imamah. Then you are just worried about your popularity. You must go there to lead with the responsibility on your shoulders of the people who pray behind you. Forget about who follows, who does not follow. It has got to be qurbatan ilallahi ta'ala." That is one. Second thing, which is very important, is that we should stand in line, a straight line, shoulder to shoulder, as close to each other as possible. That is the etiquette and the manners of namaz jama'at. And as long as the first line is not completed, we should not start the second line. It is sunnah to be in the foremost lines. If you find a space, join further. Go up and join. It doesn't require for Mukhi to tell us, "Baitu salat ma jagya che." We should see if there is room there, we have to go. First line, then second, then third. It's not jama'ah. It's the philosophy of jama'ah is defeated. If somebody starts namaz jama'at there, at the end, while here the lines are still not full. The jama'ah means we stand shoulder to shoulder to each other, and the richest man stands next to the poorest. The Seth stands next to a laborer, a mazdoor, and smells that sweat which comes from his clothes. That is the meaning of jama'ah. Not that we stand where we like, and then when we see a look at the jama'ah, we find there is a gap here and a gap there and a gap there. It's not jama'ah. Jama'at has got to be, inshallah, more we will do and deal with it tomorrow. Tonight is the wafat of Hazrat Khadija, the mother of Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha. Many of us have heard this name. We have this name in our household, Khadija, but we seldom know who she was and what was her status in Islam. But just to begin and just as an introduction, when we read Ziyarat-e-Warith, this Ziyarat-e-Warith which is read on Thursday nights is among the 4 ziyarats which have been directly reported from Aimma alayhimus salam. Other ziyarats are not reported from Aimma alayhimus salam. They are not ma'thur. But there are 4 ziyarat which are definitely, authentically reported from Ma'sumin alayhimus salam. One of them is Ziyarat-e-Warith, which was taught to us by Hazrat Imam Jafar Sadiq salawatullah. And since it is from Ma'sum, therefore every line in it has a meaning, has a purpose. Assalamu alayka yabna Muhammadin al-Mustafa. Assalamu alayka yabna Aliyin al-Murtawa. Assalamu alayka yabna Fatimat al-Zahra. Assalamu alayka yabna Khadijat al-Kubra. This is what Imam alayhi salam is addressing Imam Hussein. Salam upon you, O son of Muhammad Mustafa. That is understood. Salam upon you, O son of Ali al-Murtawa. True. Salam upon you, O son of Fatima Zahra, mother. Their thing could have stopped because all have been mentioned. To include one more and say, Assalamu alayka yabna Khadijat al-Kubra. Salam upon you, O son of Khadija the Great, Al-Kubra, the Great. It is the feminine of Kabir, Kubra. That gives us a hint that to mention among Ma'sumin the name of Khadija with the title Al-Kubra means that there is a status of Janab Khadija in Islam. That Ma'sum Imam is addressed and his lineage is attributed to Janab Khadija. Who was she? In Islam, Mawla says in Nahjul Balagha, there was a time when there was only one household in Islam and there wasn't any other. When he relates about his childhood, Imam says there was only one household in Islam. Lam yakun baytan fil Islam illa wa fihi Muhammadun wa Khadija wa ana. There was only one household and there wasn't anyone else in that house except the Prophet himself, Janabi Khadija and myself. In Nahjul Balagha, the first lady to have accepted Islam, in fact the first person. As far as Mawla is concerned, the debate as to whether he became Muslim or he became Muslim after Abu Bakr or before Abu Bakr is irrelevant because there is no question of becoming a Muslim. Doesn't apply to Imam Ali alayhi salam. Doesn't apply. Person born in Islam, Khadija is the first person to. She was a wealthy woman and her title was Malikatul Arab, means the queen of Arab. She was very wealthy. And she was a trader, that means caravan after caravan used to go from Medina on her behalf, from Mecca on her behalf for trading in Syria. And they used to come back. She was the richest, wealthiest lady. And when she married our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whether at the age of 40 or 25 is immaterial, because there are so many historical reports. Some of them prove that Janabi Khadija married our Prophet at the age of 25 and she had not married before that. She was a spinster. And that riwayah of 40 years of age being 15 years senior to our Prophet is not very much credible. There are so many ulama who have written about it. We are not going to debate that, whether she was 40 or 25. But one thing is certain, that she proposed to the Prophet that I would like to marry Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then the Prophet sent Abu Talib alayhi salam to confirm the proposal. Quran says, Alam yajidka yatiman fa'awa wa wajadaka dhallan fahada wa wajadaka ailan fa'aghna. Surah Al-Duha. O Prophet, didn't we find you an orphan and we gave you refuge? As an orphan, Allah says we gave you refuge. Refuge was that of Abu Talib. And we found you penniless. We made you sufficient in wealth. That wealth was Janabi Khadijatul Kubra. She placed all her wealth at the feet of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to say, this is for Islam. Therefore, she is a muhsina, means she has obliged all Muslims by placing all that belonged to her at the feet of the Prophet, saying, this is for Islam. And from here we learn a lesson as to what a woman in Islam can do and what is her status. If she cooperates with Islam, the major force in Islam is that of a woman. As a wife, as a mother, and as long as she lived, the Prophet did not marry another woman. That means, till the age of 50, the Prophet did not marry, except Janabi Khadija was his wife. Now, those of us who read books, English books especially, the Orientalists, and say that the Prophet was so very much passionate about women that he married 9 wives, they have got to understand one thing, that if a man is passionate and if a man is sensuous and has got permissive habits, if he wants to be enjoying with women, then he would not do it at the age of 50 upwards. He would do it at the age of 25 or earlier, because even the Arabs themselves, the mushrikeen, had offered the Prophet to say that if you withdraw your message of Islam, we will allow you to marry the most beautiful maid of Arabia. Not one, as many as you want. And in answer to that, the Prophet said, if they place sun in one hand and moon on the other, I am not going to forsake this message. So there was no question of that. Muhammad, being from that household, could have married in any family, but he did not. So the question of being permissive is simply irrelevant. At the same time, he married in Medina so many wives. There's reasons for that. He married, most of them were either divorced or widows and of advanced age. With the exception of Aisha, every one of them was either a divorced woman or a widow. And why did she? Because we don't understand the social setup of Arabia then. Leave aside then. We don't understand even the setup of Iran today. When there was a war between Iraq and Iran, after the war, Sheikh Ali Akbar Rafsanjani stood up once in Jum'ah and said that there are so many widows. Naturally, because there are so many martyrs. So many people who went, soldiers who went to fight, they were killed. What happens to their wives? They are widows. He said that in order to prevent any social vice or evil from spreading, marry more than one. Marry the widows of the martyrs. And the Western press immediately said, now Iran is on again the same spree, marrying women. They could not understand that you and I living here in this country, at this moment in life, we don't have that problem. God forbid. If there is a problem in a community where there are many widows, then it is incumbent upon people to marry those widows. Otherwise, vices will spread. But we don't have the problem, alhamdulillah. Therefore, we don't realize. But where there is war, when the Prophet had to face jihad after jihad, And so many Muslims were martyred. Their widows were left alone, desolate. There was no one to look after. If you refer to the books of history, you will find that sometimes, while the Prophet was sitting with the companions around him, a woman in her parda would come, say, Salamun alayka ya Rasulullah. I am a widow of so-and-so who was martyred with you in Badr or in Uhud or in Khaybar. And I have 3 children by him. And I have got no one to support me. Is anyone of these companions here prepared to marry me? So that he may look after me and after my children. And the Prophet would ask, is there anyone who can accommodate one more wife? And somebody would stand and say, yes, Ya Rasulullah. He would read the nikah and send that widow to them. This is how it was in the days of the Prophet. So he married. He married those widows who were desolate. And one of them was so ugly. Her name was Hafsa, the daughter of Umar ibn al-Khattab. She was so ugly that no one was prepared even to look at her. And the Prophet married that ugly woman just because of certain maslaha and reason. What is the reason? I will say. By having these ladies at home, wives, the Prophet created one more venue of riwayat, which people don't understand. So many riwayat, so many traditions of the Prophet related to the household habits of the Prophet have come from the wives. Who will tell you as to how the husband acted at home? The wife. So you find riwayat of Salama, you find riwayat of Aisha, you find riwayah from Hafsa, you find riwayah from Maria Qibtiyya, and all these, they say, we saw the Prophet on the 15th night of Shaban in Sajda, from Maghrib up to midnight. Where was he? At home. The Prophet dealt with us this way. The Prophet, sometimes the women quarreled. He would actually sit with them and reconcile them. And how did he reconcile? We have this on history, recorded. Ahlul Bayt. The fadilah and excellence and virtues of Ahlul Bayt have mainly come from the wives of the Prophet because they are the one who related. Like Hadith al-Qisa, while we say an Jabir ibn Abdullah, we say an Fatimah al-Zahra, but in the books of Ahadith, the reporter of Hadith al-Qisa is Salama. She says that this happened in my house. This happened in my house, in my room. And so many ahadith which the people of Medina and Mecca started disputing, the wives would stand up and say, don't say that. We are the witness because it happened at home. Yesterday, a friend of mine was asking me about people who weep over the dead. Suppose somebody died in the family, mother is weeping, wife is weeping, son is weeping, brother is weeping, whether it is jaiz or not. I said, it is jaiz, why not? It is natural. He said, but there is a hadith that anyone who weeps, the mayyat gets adhab. I said, yes, there is a hadith, but it has been reported in out of context. What happened, I will explain. Abdullah ibn Umar, that means son of Umar Khattab, he said, when somebody had died and people were weeping, he said, don't weep and don't cry, don't wail and don't mourn him. For I heard the Prophet say that when people start crying and weeping over a dead person, the dead person gets adhab. Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, said, Abdullah ibn Umar, be careful about how you report hadith from the Prophet. For I am a witness that there was a Jew who died, Yahudi, and the people, his relatives, were weeping. And he was the enemy of Islam. The Prophet said, while these people are sorry for his death and weeping, adhab of this man is on the increase. This was related to that Yahudi, not for Muslims. Ask us, the people of the household. So much the Prophet arranged that these women were the reporters of ahadith on Ahlul Bayt and others. What he did was that he married into various tribes, all those principal tribes which used to rise against Islam, by ta'liful qulub, winning over their hearts, because the society was such that if anyone became a son-in-law of any one tribe, that tribe would become charitable and kind to him because he has married and now he is a member of the tribe. So by marrying from various tribes, by marrying even Abu Sufyan's daughter, Habiba, Habiba, Abu Sufyan's daughter, that is Muawiyah's sister, Yazid's Pui, aunt, is the wife of the Prophet. By marrying into various clans and tribes, the Prophet tried to see that by winning them over, at least that way, Islam would spread earlier and it would be acceptable to them, because that was the psychology of the people. But these women, when they came to the household of the Prophet, they became the missionaries of Islam. Now, let's take the example of Habiba, the wife of the Prophet, the daughter of Abu Sufyan. When the final year came, final year means of Sulh Hudaybiyah, when the Prophet announced that next year I am entering Makkah, come what may, Abu Sufyan came to Medina. Privately, he came to Medina and he thought that if I can persuade Ali ibn Abi Talib through my daughter Habiba, then the Prophet may postpone coming. Otherwise, if he enters as a conqueror, we will all be slaughtered. He thought that the Prophet will come to kill. So he went to his daughter Habiba, wife of the Prophet. The Prophet was not at home. And just as he entered, he wanted to sit. And he sat, or rather tried to sit on the mattress of the Prophet. And the daughter immediately folded it and said, "You are a najis mushrik. You can't sit on the mattress of the Prophet of Islam. You are a mushrik, you are najis." A daughter tells her father, and Abu Sufyan stood up and said, "I never realized Muhammad could influence so much. I never realized that he influenced the minds of people so much. I'm your father." I said, "Yes, you are my father. You can sit on the other one mattress, but not on this. This belongs to the Prophet, and a najis man cannot sit on it." So that is it. So the reason was not, and in order to substantiate this, our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin, salawatullah wa salam alayhi, when he came back to Medina after the tragedy of Karbala, someone asked him, said, "Yabna Rasulillah, what happened in Karbala? And how could such atrocity be committed against you? How could they do this?" The answer was that if our grandfather, the Prophet of Islam, had not married into their tribes and their clans, they would not have been able to do worse than what they did. That means, although the Prophet married into the tribe, created a relationship with them, in spite of that, they did what they did. If he had not married, they could not have done worse. Imam gave a hint that the Prophet tried to reconcile with them by creating a relationship, but they did not value the relationship. So this was the philosophy, not that the Prophet went on getting. And Quran Majid is so explicit about it. Now, as far as we are concerned, we are blamed that a Muslim is one who marries 4 wives. A Muslim is one who marries 4 wives. They don't understand what it is. In that society where the Prophet came, remember, my young people, when you are asked, be able to answer. Not that you run away from the question. That, oh, Muslim is allowed to marry 4 wives. It's not a joke. Try to marry second one, see what happens. Those who have tried, they know better. You see, But na idhar ke rahe, na udhar ke rahe, na Ali ke rahe, na Umar ke rahe. Because he has married two wives. Na idhar ke rahe, na udhar ke rahe, na is ghar ke rahe, na us ghar ke rahe, na Ali ke rahe, na Umar ke rahe. Hal hawal. There was one Irani who used to brush his teeth early in the morning and say, Chigham daram dozan daram. I have got no grief, I have got two wives. Another man who was a very naive person, he said, this man seems to be so happy. He says, Chigham daram dozan daram. So he went and married also, again, second. Al-musibatu fawq al-musibah. This is musibah on musibah, because he had a two-storied house. One was down, one was up. If he climbed up, the one in the bottom would pull him down. If he came down, the one at the up would pull him up. And he said, Ya Allah. He went to that Iranian and said, Baba, you misled me. You said, Chigham daram dozan. I said, yes, but you didn't hear the complete verse. I said, Chigham daram dozan daram, yak dar Karbala, yak dar Isfahan. One in Karbala and one in Isfahan. You have kept both of them in one house. See? You have to understand this. So try and get. What Islam did was, when Islam said 4 wives, what was the actual meaning of it? When Islam said 4 wives, the prevailing social practice at the time of our Prophet and just before it was that people married numberless wives. Numberless. There was no limit. Marrying and then sometimes divorcing, sometimes forsaking, neglecting, and what not. Problems. Now the children, sometimes, it happened in that society, the children would come to the father and say, Salaam alaikum, father, I want some money for maintenance. And that man would scratch his head and say, to which mother you belong? He doesn't know. This was so the injunction, or rather the command or the order or the statute of 4 wives is not to increase from 1 to 4. It is from reducing from too many to 4. It is a diminutive order and not an order it increases. Try to understand. Suppose there is a wife who is sick, ill. She cannot give the services of a wife. Shariat will tell you, you will marry another one. You have no issue by the first wife. You want children, you marry another one. Of course, sensibly, not by creating problems. And this is how it happened up to 4. Not more than 4, because you can't have numberless. This was a sort of reductive, or bringing to a limit, setting a limit. And not that everyone was encouraged that because you are a Muslim, you must marry 4 wives. That is not the idea. Now I'm asking the Western people who are trying to always point a finger at us. How many wives do you have? Huh? How many? Be candid and be very frank. How many do you have? According to the Church of England, 1. And according to Church of Shaitan, how many? Take any paper and open and read what is happening. All that which runs under the name of mistresses and illicit relationship is personal life. Huh? Even those who are our representatives in the parliament sometimes are shown and exposed that here is their conduct. All that passes in modernization. Islam gives you a legal relationship where you are bound. If you have second wife, third wife, you are equally responsible for her maintenance and for her upkeep. So much so that if you have 4 wives, if you are so lucky, then you have to share the night, 4 nights. Each wife having a night. You can't sleep at one wife's more than a night. This is what it is. In a week. Understand that it was something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained. Janab Khadija suffered. She gave birth to Janab Fatima Zahra and Janab Tahir and Janab Qasim. Tahir and Qasim died in infancy. Ibrahim was not born of Khadija, was born of Maria Qibtiyya. He also died in childhood. The only one to survive was Janab Fatima Zahra Salamullah alayha. The other daughters who are mentioned here and there in history or wherever, they are not her daughters, they are the daughters of her sister, who she brought together to be brought up by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like Zainab and Ruqayya and others. She had only one daughter, the only child. Allama Majlisi alayhi rahmah says that because she married our Prophet, in spite of her wealth, in spite of her status, they tried to laugh at her and ridicule and say that you married a yatim, you married a poor, you married a pauper. Because the Prophet at that time had yet not declared his prophethood. He was 25 years of age. He was conducting certain businesses, caravan, he was taking caravan of Khadija and come back with it. But at that time, he was known as an ordinary young person. You have married a poor, an orphan. And Janab Khadija knew what she had. When Janab Fatima Zahra was about to be born, Allama Majlis alayhi rahmah writes that the women of the whole city boycotted her. That means normally they would come for the services of a midwife to help a lady deliver a child. They boycotted her and they said, none of us would go to help Janab Khadija. You can imagine a woman who has had that status, that much of wealth, that much of respect, lost everything for the sake of Islam. And it is for this reason that our Aimma alayhimus salam have reported, one after the other. You will not find this hadith anywhere else but in Ahlul Bayt, because it is our own story. It is the story of our own world, of Ahlul Bayt. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Hawa, our grandmother, Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun, Maryam, the mother of Janab Isa, to come there and help Janab Khadija so that Janab Fatima Zahra is born. This is Janab Khadija. One day, the Prophet was sitting with all the wives except Khadija was dead already, naturally. He had not married, as I said, any other woman after Janab Khadija. The Prophet started praising Janab Khadija and enumerating her services to Islam, one after the other. And Aisha of all said, Ya Rasulullah, forget that old lady now. She wasn't young, she was old. You have, mashallah, so many wives now, and why should you remember? And the Prophet said, Aisha, you have said this time, never say it again. For I haven't seen a woman like Khadija. In Islam, there isn't a lady to equal her status. Not before her, nor after her. Except her daughter, Fatima Zahra Salamullah. What do you know about Khadija? The Prophet said. And then again, he went on enumerating her services, her sacrifice for the sake. When the Prophet came now, I want to say this because so many things are read in the books and then people say, oh. When the Prophet came from Ghar Hira, inshallah ta'ala, whenever you go to Makkah, and if you can, if you are healthy, do go to Ghar Hira. Ghar Hira is the cave of Hira. I mean, it takes 45 minutes to climb. I know that. It's not very easy for elderly people or people who are ill to go. But for those who can manage, go and see that Ghar, that cave, in which the Prophet used to sit for meditation for years. Years. Imam al-Islam says, years before he declared his prophethood, he used to go there. In the month of Ramadan, he used to be there all the time. Janab Khadija would climb that mountain, leave the meals, whatever it was, for the Prophet and come back. Never did she complain to the Prophet saying that, Ya Muhammad, why are you sitting here? I am waiting for you at home. She left his food and returned. And when the Prophet returned, she welcomed him. And on that day, Jibreel Amin said, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Iqra' bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. That was the first revelation after Alhamd. Iqra' bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Read by the name of your Lord who created. Now you read the English books and some other books, you find the Prophet started shivering, trembling, not knowing what is happening. Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu. In one of the books it is written that he wanted to jump from the rock and commit suicide. Muslims have written this, and of course when Muslims have written, then the non-Muslims would like to always quote this. In this England, 3 or 4 weeks ago, on Sunrise Radio, which we are, mashallah, at the moment listening to, and we are praising it so much, a Hindu gentleman said that Muhammad had venereal disease in Medina, in Makkah, and he ran away because he was about to be hit and beaten by the family of a woman. So he ran and he came to live in Medina. Here, it was reported in Jang paper. Many Muslims have now written letters of protest. It's happening even today. Salman Rushdie is not yet dead. Many like him are still there to offend the Muslim and injure their feelings. So, when you read this, that the Prophet did not know that he was a prophet, and the Jibreel Amin appeared, he was so frightened that he wanted to commit suicide. Or when he came home, they say he came with fever, temperature running high, and he said, Zammiluni, Zammiluni, cover me with something. And Khadija ran to cover him because he was having temperature. And then she said, Muhammad, what has happened to you? And Muhammad said, I saw someone. I saw Jibreel. And he told me, Muhammad, you are a prophet. I heard voices from everywhere. This is just like hallucination. We are trying to see that the revelation to the prophet was nothing but a hallucination. Something he saw and imagined. Na'udhu billah. And this is what our boys will read. Our girls will read and perhaps believe in it. And then what happened? Khadija took him to her uncle, Waraqa ibn Nawfal. Waraqa was a Christian saint, was a monk. And when he looked at the Prophet, he said, oh, the features of Muhammad tell me that he is the Prophet. That means Waraqa bin Nawfal knew that Muhammad was a prophet. Muhammad himself did not know that he was a prophet. This is on one hand. On the other hand, we say, all Muslims, irrespective of the school of thought we belong to, that Muhammad is Sayyidul Mursaleen, master of all the prophets, Khatamul Anbiya, the seal of all the messengers, right? We say he is better than Isa and Musa and all of them. Isa alayhi salam, while he was still in the arms of his mother, Quran says that Isa was in the arms of his mother. And when people asked Maryam, you are not a married woman, how did you conceive a child? فَأَشَارَتْ إِلَيْهِ. Quran says she pointed towards him. قَالَ إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ آتَانِيَ الْكِتَابِ وَجَعَلَنِي نَبِيًّا. Isa said, I am the slave of God. He has given me a book and he has made me a prophet. A baby in the arm is a prophet, and he himself testifies while still in the arm. And your prophet did not know he was the prophet at the age of 40, and yet he is better. Where are we being led to? So the fact is, my friends, that Janab Khadija alayhi salam, when she heard, when the Prophet came and said, Khadija, I have been now asked and commanded by Allah to declare. I have been asked to announce. And I am announcing. And the first revelation is Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Khadija immediately said, Amantu billah wa bi risalatik. I have full faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and in the message given unto you. So she was the first one to say, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasul. This is Janabi Khadija. Naturally, when she died, after the declaration of the Prophet, for 10 years she was alive. She was alive for 10 years. On the 10th year of Rasulullah's announcement, 10th year, she died. 3 years nearly before Hijrah. And when she died, Janabi Fatima Zahra alayha salam was 5 years old. And if you read into history, you find that Janabi Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha wept, cried over the passing away of her mother. And after that, for so many days, Fatima alayhi salam was so very much grieved. And the Prophet used to keep the daughter together with him all the time, so that there may be some solace and some consolation, because she has lost her dear mother. And you will remember that after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which took place 13 years later, after Janabi Khadija, when Janabi Fatima Zahra was 18 years old, at that time, at the graveside of the Prophet, Janabi Fatima remembered Janabi Khadija also. He said, Father, Ya Rasulullah, I lost my mother when I was a child. A tender mother who looked after me. A mother who looked after Islam. A mother who looked after you. And today I have lost you. صبت علي مصائب لو أنها صبت على الأيام سرنا لياليها. So much of atrocities, so much of adversities have rained upon me, that if it rained upon the dark night, day, it would go into dark night. This is what the Fatima Zahra said. It is a lesson for us. May we always remember Janabi Khadijatul Kubra, and we pray to Allah that our ladies and our women draw lessons from the life of Janabi Khadija. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.